Number one, and you are being graded. Your work as a fertility doctor is what turned you on to keto and carnivore.
True.
All right. Number two, plant-derived foods and carbohydrates are linked to infertility.
True.
Next, our bodies are either a temple or an amusement park.
Oh, they're the temple.
All right. Number four, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this one. Intermittent fasting can be detrimental to a woman's hormonal balance.
False.
Next up, lean protein is healthier than fatty protein.
False.
All right. And then lastly, ice cream doesn't need to be unhealthy.
It's healthy for sure. True.
Oh, I know that the audience is going to be waiting for that one. So I think we're just going to make sure we leave that on the back end. So people have to stick around for the entire podcast in order to get that answer. So anyhow, so again, Dr. Kiltz, thank you so much for being on today. We are pumped to have you.
Well, I am so glad to be here and sharing these ideas, which are so important to our families around the globe.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start off? I mean, I think we alluded to it a little bit early on in our first couple questions with infertility. Give us your background. Help the audience understand who you are, how you arrived at where we are today.
Much of it is accidental. Never was a dream that I'd be where I'm at today, but I still build dreams on what we've done. But I'm a reproductive endocrinologist. I own and run CNY Fertility Centers, which is, I think, a global leader in fertility care. About 20 years ago, I started integrating Eastern and Western medicine. Probably about 15 years ago, I started integrating paleo diets and keto diets. And then for me, for the last 13 years, I've been carnivore. And my intention in life is to dig deep in understanding the why of disease and then helping people heal the diseases without me. And that's the part that I think is the most important. We have so many people that are suffering from infertility and pregnancy losses, but every disease you can name it. And I keep a list nearby me of all the people that I know that suffered and passed away younger than they should have. And I'm just really passionate about helping people around the globe. I went into medicine to help people. 67, be 68 in March of next year. I've never felt healthier. And carnivore, by the way, and keto, but it was really carnivore that healed my arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, kidney stones, bowel bleeding. And I'll go down the list of all of it. Fearfulness, depression, anxiety, all of those things have gone. And I've just seen so many people healing. But I still am a traditional doctor. I work full time. I'm a surgeon. I do a lot of reproductive immunology, and I think I'm a life coach. I want to help people think better about themselves because I needed it, and I integrate a lot of faith within it. So really, there's not one part of me because we're all multifaceted, every single one of us, but I'm dedicated to continue the mission of helping people heal with some really outrageous ideas.
I love that. I think one of the most outrageous ideas that you just shared as a doctor is you want people to learn how to heal without you. Can you just dive a little bit deeper than that? Because I think doctors want to keep their patients around for a long time. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Well, I went into medicine to help people heal. My sister had diabetes since age 4. She died at 52 of complications from a diabetic diet and lifestyle, which I realized was the killer. And no disrespect to the doctors that I think felt and thought they were doing the right thing. But there's plenty of people in this world that are continue doing the thing that they'll need me. And I know that. But if I could do all the things to help everyone know this and find something else to do, which I love doing this probably more than anything, then I'd be glad to do it. It is really outrageous, but every doctor really is there to help people heal and be healthy. But much of medicine is about managing your diseases, that it's just you're unlucky to have them, that your DNA has just sort of dedicated you to this drab life of diseases and have to visit your doctor and take these drugs and dissections, where, in fact, the cause of disease is really simple. It's our healthy diets and lifestyles, which are wrong, and we have to share that in a way that is radical, amazing, crazy.
Well, that being said, I mean, where did your path turn, or did you come into becoming a doctor with the intention of, let me go this route of seeking natural ways of remedying people's problems? Because that, what you're describing, I think for us, we're like, this is the ideal doctor. This is a guy that we would want to see. This is who, we would want to have in our corner or in the corner of family members. And yet that's not the position of most doctors. It's, let me cure this with a pill, let me give you this injection. And obviously that's not you. So what changed for you that brought you to this place?
I was once blind and could not see, because we're trained as a doctor to be doctors in the modern doctor system. If you think about it, where the propaganda, it's not propaganda, it's our methodology. I was inspired by a doctor when I was 19 after I broke a leg, and I was like, he was a hippie doctor, and I was a street kid. I was in a gang, kicked out of school, couldn't read, my father in jail growing up in LA. So I managed to become a doctor, and I learned, and I became really good at being a standard doctor. I grew up Catholic Christian. I became an atheist. I said, God doesn't exist. This is science, and you got to know the science. And then I would argue about the papers that proved the science, and I was very dogmatic. And then eventually I went through some troubles in my life. Number one, physical troubles, ailments, depression, bowel problems, bleeding, kidney stones, migraines. I went through a divorce, very difficult. My daughter and I had a very difficult time, and that was hard to go through. And I had a friend that kind of helped me, Craig Humphrey. He was a Buddhist, and we began to, learn different things that I wasn't used to. I began to integrate. One day an acupuncturist called me and said, hey, I'm seeing a lot of your patients, and I'm wondering if you want to learn more about acupuncture. And I met her and I learned about it. This is 20 plus years ago. And then I started beginning to think, well, maybe meditation, prayer, yoga, acupuncture can help my patients in fertility. So I built a healing arts center and began to talk about it a lot, but I practiced it myself. And because I needed it, I was suffering personally. And then at the time, about 20 years ago, some of my patients were getting pregnant on something called paleo diet. And I never talked about diet. I'm an Italian, Mediterranean, ate all the stuff, the pasta. I was a great cook, loved cooking everything, eating everything, drank too much wine, and do all the things that were hurting me, but I didn't know it. But when I started looking at paleo, and then I tripped over keto, and I was like, I was beginning to dig deep and then question everything I've learned in health and wellness. And I found some really crazy books that were like, wait a minute, plants are the killers. And the mega marketing master system of, I call it the medical crazy machine, which is basically selling drugs and dissections and modalities to take care of your life. Now, again, I'm not chastising any of that, because we're all kind of part of that. And I take full responsibility that I've got to be better at sharing the things that I'm learning. And so, then COVID hit, and I was like, well, I was already blogging 20 years ago. I had a website called Mind, Body, Smile, and I wrote a book on daily inspirations and prayer and meditation. And from there, I just kind of did more and more in this. I figured, well, gee, we closed down for COVID. I'm not talking to anyone. I might as well do something. I started blogging and sharing this. And again, the radical idea is that now I'm like, I'll give you, and doctors, I could talk to a doctor and they'll go, nope, because they still have that same thing that I had. Well, we'll fight in the opposite idea. And so I just want to keep on sharing it. I'm not here to fight anyone. I'll just be the example and share it away.
I mean, we honor you because as a doctor, we know that many don't get a whole lot of training in nutrition. They're not exposed or choose not to be exposed to different modalities. And for you to actually say, you know what, maybe I don't know it all. Let me go explore. And especially when you start seeing results elsewhere, when you're the guy that people are coming to and you didn't prescribe something to them, yet they're coming back with the solution to what, their problem was. It's like, you got to pay attention, right? Either that or you're going to be dogmatic and push them off.
I got a letter from one of my doctors today that I haven't had a colonoscopy in like 10 years. And I'm like, well, because I don't have any bleeding or bowel problems anymore. And then my nurse practitioner, she said, Dr. Kiltz, you sure you should get it checked? And I don't know what to do it now. But there's this sense that, it's such a miracle and amazing thing, the way I look at it. And I'm like, wow, all the diseases I suffer from are gone. And now I probably talk way too much about it. And most people probably don't even want to hear it. They just want the drug, the dissection, and let's get to it and make a baby and not have to deal with all this stuff. Because no one wants to hear about diet, by the way. And you mentioned something that the reason we weren't taught about diet is because diet was never thought to be a disease causer anyway. And a healthy diet was fruit, fiber, vegetables, seeds, nuts, lean meat, no red meat. It was the pyramid. That's what I grew up in. And so the reason there was no nutrition in medical school and beyond is because it was actually meant to be kept to the nutritionists. And the doctor is just referred to a nutritionist, and we stay out of it because the nutritionists are trained by the companies who create the foods and market the foods. And so they're under the same guise in order to stick to the story. And doctors sometimes don't stick to the story, so we don't want to give them too much information, maybe.
Wow. It's so interesting. As you said that, I thought, food pyramid. A pyramid scheme in business is bad, but a pyramid in our food system is good, so make sense. But my question to you is back to that true and false, plant-derived foods and carbohydrates are linked to infertility. You said that's true. Can you give our listeners a bit of a deeper view and dive on that?
Well, think of infertility as just another disease. Infertility, cancer, stroke, heart disease, dementia, depression, suicidality. Those are diseases, by the way. And again, there are thousands of them. I can't even name all. But infertility is, like I said, one of the ones that happens most commonly and earlier than you ever know. And I think it happens in utero also. But there are 5 main causes of disease. I'll go to the top 4. Number 1 is plant sugars. Number 2 is plant antigens, lectins, oxalates, phytates. These are particles inside the plant that when we eat them, they micronize and they distribute everywhere like dust and dirt everywhere. They get embedded in the organs, and the ovary is just another organ, the uterus, the tubes, the prostate, the testicles, along with our other endocrine glands. They get embedded there, and then they elicit an immune reaction. So the white cells come in and the antibodies come in, and it starts acute and chronic inflammation, damages your testicles, your ovaries, the sperm and the egg, and then the anatomy, the tubes, then the rest of the uterus and things like that. And so the sugars, the antigens, the chemicals. So most people don't know that things like soy contains a phytoestrogen and a phytoandrogen. And so when you eat plants, you're eating the birth control pill, you're eating the abortion pill. And so, for so many young men, their testosterone levels go down because the phytoandrogens, estrogens, block your normal production of your own androgens. And so it's like they drop down. Plants are live organisms. They want to be alive, and they've evolved millions of years longer than we have. So they already know the way to kill you, control you, and domesticate you. And I have to mention fermentation. What does fermentation make? Alcohol. So for everyone that's eating a plant-based lean meat diet, and people don't know that amino acids from proteins go to sugar, and they're fermentable. And so in our gut, we're fermenting, and fermentation makes heat, alcohol, aldehydes, methane gas. And those things are damaging to every nook and cranny of your body. And so I think so many of the diseases are all stem from a gastrointestinal dysfunction, which, we think the GI tract, the intestines just keep everything inside, but it doesn't. It seeps everywhere. And that's really the main 4 causes. And I'm going to throw in one other: excessive exercise. Excessive exercise heats up the core, damages DNA, proteins are damaged, or glycoproteins are damaged. And so really we're all doing something that is not natural to the human body, is excessive exercise and eating a plant-based lean meat diet, which again, 5 things. And if you look at my keto and carnivore books, you'll see the list of those, or go to my website, drkiltz.com. It's listed, but it's completely opposite. And the brain will not believe it because the propaganda, I call it like Nazism or communism or whatever belief system that we kind of say, that's not good, but we believe it.
We're 100% in agreement, especially on the over-exercising component of it, because we've long now been proponents of very short duration, very infrequent workouts. ones in which you are providing your body the proper stimulus that it needs in order to develop strength and improve general function and mobility and all that. However, most people, there you go. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm fascinated because, you just took it to a different place. When we usually speak about it, we're talking about it from the perspective of the understanding of stress physiology. The fact that exercise, although it has a positive impact on us physically, mentally, emotionally, it's still a negative stress on your body during the time in which you are performing it. And thereafter, as your body is attempting to recover from that workout. However, you just putting that spin on it, which goes even a level deeper, I think is quite interesting. And I mean, it has me even thinking about how we can promote that message even more. But anyway, fascinating.
Well, when I was going through much hardship for 20 years ago, and I used to do a lot of sports, but I started running, and I was never a runner. But through the hardships, the running saved me, it emotionally and mentally. And I used to listen to books and podcasts. Books. I listened to books. I'm a reader. I'm a voracious reader, and watching and listening to people like your podcast. I think these are things that we need to be doing. I don't listen to music. If I'm going to play my guitar, make some music, but I rarely listen to music. I listen to books, because I want to fill my mind with things that are just infinitely out there, which will change the direction of your life more than anything.
So good.
That's amazing. So I think another good place to go right now, because you started to touch on it, I really want to talk about fat. And yes, we've all been brought up in this low fat world, and, red meat's the worst thing for you, especially if it's fatty red meat. I mean, forget about that. Like if you want to have a dried out London broil, like that's okay. But, forget about a fatty ribeye.
You're describing my childhood.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of mine as well. So I think all of us. So again, explain where does fat fit in this hormonal equation? Where does it fit in our health?
If you're skinny in a famine, you're fertilizer fast. Fat is fertile and fit. Almost every organism purposely gets fat in order to gestate. And whether they're hibernating, they're nesting, or they're emigrating, moving. Fat is the fuel for the Ferrari. There's no other energy for the mitochondria except acetyl-CoA from fatty acids. And we have maligned fat and obesity when it turns out it has nothing to do with disease. I don't care if you have the highest BMI, being obese doesn't cause any disease. And just take cholesterol. What's vitamin D from? What's all your endocrine hormones? What are your cortisol and aldosterone? They're all from cholesterol and fat, and without it, we're dead. And so I was looking up fat and trying to sort of explain fat. That when you eat fat, you actually are eating every mineral, vitamin, and macronutrient that you need in your body. How else would a bear that hibernates and gestates for 6 months doesn't eat, piss or poop or drink, and yet they grow a baby and they lose not 1 ounce of muscle mass or bone mass? They lose only one thing: fat. Fat is actually the most amazing tissue of our body, which contains, think of fat as adipose tissue. And why do you think it's distributed everywhere? Because you need it everywhere. And so our actual focus on skinny is killing people. And I tell I see obese patients that no one else will take care of because they have too high of a BMI. They're having babies all day long. And by the way, you can go carnivore or keto and get pregnant, deliver a baby, or get pregnant within 3 months of this if you really are focused. You get rid of the inflammation. So fat is so critical. And now here's an interesting point. Where is fat made in your body and what from? Is it made in your fat cells?
Stored in your fat cells.
It's stored in fat cells. Is it made there? No way. No. Is it made in every cell of your body? No way. It's made in the liver. The liver's function is to make fat, and it requires insulin in order to do that. And it makes it out of amino acids and simple sugars. So this is such an important thing that no one in this field is talking about. Wow. You say insulin resistance is liver damage, and it's really simple. So you eat food, it breaks down to either amino acids, simple sugars, or fatty acids. That's the macronutrients. When you eat fat, and by the way, no one eats fat in the standard diets of the world. They're eating lean meat and plants. But if you eat real fat, it goes to the lymphatics and then it's circulated systemically because it doesn't need to be made into what it needs to be. It is already. When you eat proteins, lean meat, they break down amino acids in the liver, they convert to sugar. And in the liver via insulin, they convert to fat. And the same thing with all plant sugars you eat, they go to the liver, they must be converted to fat. But everyone's eating 3 to 6 meals a day, complex carbohydrates. So is your GI system ever empty of plants? Never.
No.
Day you're born to the day you die. You're always secreting.
We eat carnivores also.
But that's it, right? So,
Yeah.
but you're always secreting sugars into the liver, which causes glycation, causes your insulin levels to go up. So why do you think insulin's up all the time? It has nothing to do with insulin. It has to do with too much sugar and a damaged liver. And so the simplicity of this system is simple. All these complex mTORs and Randall cycles, and like, I just get a headache over it. 99.9% of the human beings don't need the yik yak. We're all arguing over this and that. They need a simple story. And fat is where it's at. Eat fat, suppress inflammation in the gut, suppress inflammation systemically, and be the healthiest you could ever imagine. That's the simple story.
I want to unpack some of that even further. I mean, it's fascinating because you know what you mentioned early on about mitochondria, right? And the importance of fat for our mitochondria. And I think that we have long associated, or at least we're beginning to understand that a lot of disease that we're developing, particularly around cancer, right? These are diseases that are mitochondrial related, right? It's damaged mitochondria. And we know that part of the issue too is this consumption of highly refined carbohydrates, highly processed foods, seed oils, and what have you. And I think that just, you talking more about fat's influence on mitochondria, I mean, it kind of like just went off in my mind as a light bulb, because I always just think in terms of the effect of carbohydrates having a negative impact on our health and disease. But the way you're positioning it, it's more like it's not just that. It's that we're not getting enough high quality fat. And that is just as big of an issue as this overconsumption of carbohydrates.
We're not eating animal fat. This is interesting for all of us because it's healthy fats and high quality fats, which again, most people are like, well, they said avocado's a good fat, or, those cashews are good fats, when there's only animal fat or plant oils. Plant oils are all industrial. They're never healthy for us. Animal fat is nature's fat. That is it. You know how to get it. And it's twice the calories of a protein or amino acid or a simple sugar. And this is the focus. I was looking at protein poisoning, plant poisoning, and fat poisoning. Now, you've heard of rabbit starvation and protein poisoning. You've heard of kind of sugar overload and plant poisoning. Have you ever heard of fat poisoning?
Oh, never.
I found a paper on fat poisoning.
Wow.
They fed cows a high-fat coconut oil diet, 30% of the calories. The cows died. Why did the cows die? Because
it was a plant-based fat.
Well, that's correct. But the fat suppressed the microbes in the ruminant. And what do ruminants need? Microbes in the gut. It killed the microbes. Okay? So fat is antimicrobial. We never eat fat. The microbes in our gut are deadly, by the way, and they're proliferating and they're killing us. And yet we say they're good. But what if that's not true?
Hold on. I got to back this up because I'm like, I want to make sure I understand so that other people understand. So bad bugs, bad microbes in our gut, they feast on sugar, correct? We're on the same page there.
Well, what is a good bug and what is a bad bug?
I guess it's their function.
E. coli could be said as good or bad. So my lactobacillus, okay, now I'm suggesting that they're not good. There's no such thing as a good bug or a bad bug. It depends where it's at. In general, the GI tract is able to handle it, except if you really understand modern medicine and most diseases, They're secondary to breakdown of the glycocalyx, which is the sugar layer that protects the epithelium of the gut. But because it's damaged by microbes and a high sugar diet, you now have a leaky gut and the microbes get in. And where do they go?
All over your body, bloodstream.
Yeah. I mean, COVID killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
E. coli, staph, strep, viruses. I don't care what it is. We've got it wrong. And would you put bacteria and yeast into an open wound in your skin?
No way.
Would you put it in your eyes?
No way.
Would you put it in a culture dish and, embryos in a lab?
No way.
It kills them. So why is it good in the vagina or the uterine cavity?
Yeah, I guess it's the amount. I think it's the amount, right? But you're saying not at all.
Our science is based on a high plant sugar-based diet. So when our observations are based on a healthy plant-based diet and we say, gee, those bugs are really bad right now, must be bad bugs, let's put in some good bugs. But they never say if they use antibiotics or the treatments at the same time. You ever notice that? Yeah. Which is the thing that works? I mean, in general, here, drink this poop-laden water. Would that be generally the thing to do? Probably not. But we humans come up with leeches and bleeding people out. It's no wonder we think microbes are good for us.
Interesting. So then you are under the philosophy that there are no good bugs at all in our body.
There are bugs in our body. There are bugs in our skin because they happen to be there. Because to be in an environment with them everywhere, it's impossible to be them without them being in our body. That doesn't mean they're good for us.
Interesting.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so all the science is built on the fact of selling a probiotic, a prebiotic. And so maybe what we've got is not completely right.
Interesting.
Well, then I would assume the solution therein lies in changing your approach to nutrition, right? I mean, basically what you're saying is that we're in this state where we do, have these bugs in us, right? And a lot of the issues that we have, if we have issues with them, is specific to the way that we're eating. And it's very difficult to measure what's good and what's bad because we're measuring from a place in which we're not even eating an ancestrally appropriate diet, right? So it's like we're all basically starting behind the 8 ball.
Everyone feels better on a plant-based diet because plants are full of heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and all sorts of feel-good drugs, psilocybin, ayahuasca, which is deadly for us and our children. So, and plus, if you eat a high plant-based diet, you're going to make some alcohol in your gut. You're going to feel better, right? You just don't know the difference. So if 99.9% of the humanity is eating a plant-based lean meat diet, they don't know the magic of fatty carnivore. And that's the challenge, or fasting. Like if there's bacteria and yeast in your bloodstream, is that good for you?
Stuff, right?
How about parasites inside the muscle of the food you eat?
Yeah.
It would be bad. So if it's in you or in that animal you're eating, that's not good. But when you get high quality meat, is the meat contaminated with bugs and bacteria everywhere?
No.
It's not. And so, when they start feeding cows ground up brains, and then they get mad cow disease and everyone say don't eat cows. Well, cows don't eat brain. And so ultimately we're living in a world of mass production of food and then a lot of fake food, which fakes us all out. I mean, people want to eat fake meat because their brain wants them to eat meat. So they'll eat fake anything because they are brainwashed. And this is the crazy story here that I'll bet $1 billion there's something simple to this story. And Occam's razor, if you ever heard of Occam's razor, the simple answer is the one. Every time I hear a complex scientific story, and I'm like, okay, I'm not that smart. Give it to me simply. And again, so let's just say we barbecued our meat over an open fire. Did it kill the microbes on the outside of the meat? Sure it did. Yeah. But you ate the inside meat pretty rare and raw because it didn't have it. But it had the most important things to eat were the fatty meat, the organ meats, the bone marrow, and ultimately every mineral and vitamin your body needs is in that meat you eat.
I mean, I would agree 1,000% with that. I mean, when we just look back historically, I mean, what did tribes, what did hunters and, hunters, I won't even go to gatherers, because we know that if they gathered anything, it was for maybe like 1 month out of the year. But what were they always looking for? They're looking for meat. And at that, they're looking for fatty meat, because that is where all of our nutrients reside. And so, it's so interesting. I mean, we could go down the tinfoil hat road also, which I know Corey Beth would love.
I love that.
I know you do. We could go down that road too, of like, why have we been pushed to this degree of saying, well, we should not be eating any meats,
Morningstar
no
burgers,
fatty meat,
Beyond Burgers.
we should be having a plant-based diet. It's like, it's almost, there's something sinister about it,
Well, it's not, see, there's the masters and there's the masses. So thousands and thousands of years ago, the masters that hunted and ate the meat realized that those that are eating the mush were domesticated. So domesticated animals are easily to care for, and all you need to do is feed them mush. Mush is plant material, and fatty meat is master's material. So it's all about power and ego. We all have power and ego issues, all of us. I don't care who you are in life. We then get addicted to it. And plus, likely wherever we lived, and as culture grew and civilizations grew, you needed the master class and the masses class. You needed the warriors, the soldiers, the slaves, the peasants, and the prisoners to do the work. And the masters controlled the message. And when you are addicted to the plants, the sugars, and the chemicals that come with the plants, then you're highly domesticated. And if you think about lions and wolves that eat plants, they become domesticated cats and dogs. And our modern cats and dogs eat the scraps of humans. And again, the masters ate some of the crap too, because most people are forgotten about the carnivore way. They've lost it. We're here to teach them and how to find themselves again.
I agree. I mean, we just like hearing people's experiences. So when you did make the change to carnivore, because you said you were eating paleo, then you went keto, what was sort of for you the thing that really flipped the switch? I mean, what did you notice that was different?
Well, I was just intrigued by the paleo, keto, and nutrition. And I'd grab every book I can and I'd watch whatever I could. And, I was feeling better, but I still wasn't like that. And then one day I was watching a guy like you, Mike, that looked ripped and, just, says, I eat meat. And I'm like, he only eats meat. He's ripped, doesn't exercise. And I'm like, and all of his problems went away. Most problems, still problems if you're alive. And I'm like, shit, that one's for me. I already love meat already, but instead of eating tenderloin or chicken, I went to the ribeye and I ate the fat and I got rid of all the vegetables. And in 1 month, like bingo, bowel bleeding, hemorrhoids, gone. I thought, ooh, kidney stones, migraines, arthritis, psoriasis, just gone. And I felt depressed and anxious and maybe fearful and maybe a little bit of, I don't know if I can do this. Inferiority complex. They're smarter than me. And, whatever we're having in our lives. And I'm like, whoa, it changed. And so it brought the lion out. Lions lead, sheep be our feed. That's the simple story of this. And you are what you eat. How often have you ever heard that? You are what you eat. You want to eat the plants? Be a plant eater. You want to eat the meat? There are only a few of us.
And it's so true. So true. I know when I made the change myself, one of the challenges, and right now we're going to speak to the people who are hearing this and they're like, you know what? I've been listening to you guys. I've been wanting to go carnivore. I've been dipping my toe in, but I'm scared because we've been indoctrinated. We've been led to believe, we've been brainwashed. We've been told that here are all the potential pitfalls of you eating this fatty meat, and even me at first. I mean, especially because as a pro natural bodybuilder who was counting his macros, who was tightly managing everything he was doing, it's like the thought of ever going above 50 grams of fat in a day was like, whoa. And now I eat 3 times that amount on a daily basis. But it took a little while. Was that similar to you? I mean, did you really have to take some time to shift your thought process?
Yeah, it's all a thought. It's a mind game. All of this is a mind game. And you have to put yourself in front of people like yourselves or listen to my blogs or many other people out there to listen and hear the stories. And then, we're just all regular folk. There's no such thing as anyone higher or lower, all regular human beings. I don't care. And I, listen to stories and talk to people, and you're like, wow, there's something here more than anything I've ever learned. And it's storytelling. We're storytellers. We hung around the fire, we roasted meat, you had the big spit, whatever you're doing, and you shared the meat. My brain is always like, why? How can I? And so I was constantly looking, but I would read it and I would say, something's not right here. And I couldn't figure out the function of sugar in the human body. Do you know the function of sugars in the human body?
There is none. Well,
yeah, there is actually.
Well,
they're critical.
We do. We
no,
make carbs, but
yeah, but no. What's the function of those sugars in your body?
Oh, energy.
Energy.
No, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
It's glycosylation. Glycosylation is the most important thing in your body, more than you ever know. So amino acids make proteins. Almost every protein you make is glycosylated with the sugar in order to give its proper function, charge, and shape. The glycobiome, no one knows about. The glycobiome. So when I mention the glycocalyx, you see, sugars cover every epithelial layer of your body. Sugars are the barcode that says friend or foe, fertilize or reject, implant or reject. So the glycocalyx is like the trees and the grass and the flowers on the soil. The epithelium of every cell, the cell membrane, is made out of phospholipids, fats, and cholesterol. Embedded in the wall are proteins, and embedded on those proteins and the lipids are sugars. It's a tree, it's grass, it's growing. That is the most important thing in your body, and there are over 200 diseases that are not properly glycosylated. Glycation is the abnormal binding of sugars everywhere in your body, which causes 99.9% of the diseases we suffer from, because we eat plants, and plants are never required in the human diet.
We're getting schooled. I
agree.
Makes
So
sense.
I'm what I'm trying to wrap my head around, though, is so in that process, though, we are only getting those carbohydrates in a perfect scenario, right? The ideal scenario, we're getting those through the conversion of and breakdown of amino acids.
Nope.
Because we're not consuming carbohydrates.
Nope.
We're not consuming sugars.
Every piece of meat you eat contains cells. Those cells, whether they're fat cells or muscle cells or vessel cells or organ cells, those cells contain amino acids, proteins, and carbohydrates. They contain DNA. So they contain the things you think, how do I get those? But you are right. You take triglycerides. Again, we break it down too small. Think of the tissue you're eating. Fat cell has a membrane, has a nucleus, has mitochondria, has endoplasmic reticulum. It has the Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, many things that you and I kind of just like, oh, it's fat, it's protein, amino acids, and sugar. We're forgetting about what those things are there for. So the majority of your hormones are glycoproteins. And so what's a glycoprotein? COVID virus is a glycoprotein. Glycoproteins are very antigenic. It's the sugar that's antigenic. So your blood type is determined by what? A sugar.
Wow.
But this is the simplicity of the science. But so how is glucose energy? Does it directly go to the mitochondria and convert to ATP? No. It has to be converted to what?
I'm gonna go pull out my old nutrition book.
No. But this is not what we're taught. This is why, because every medical student I talk to, they don't know this answer.
Right.
But it's simple. What's the biggest problem for most people in life? Getting too skinny or too fat?
Too fat.
Okay. What are they eating to get fat?
Carbohydrates, sugar,
plants and proteins.
Interesting.
Okay. Now remember, what happens to there are 20 to 21 amino acids in the human body. 9 of them are essential. 13 of them are glucogenic. That means they turn to glucose. 5 of them are ketogenic. they have ketogenic properties. 2 of them are either one. So that means almost all the amino acids that are in excess of what you need go to fat in the liver via insulin. Because otherwise, we eat a bunch of protein, amino acids, big muscles, right? By just eating amino acids.
No, that definitely doesn't happen that way.
And then, well, what's protein poisoning? What is that?
I mean, usually it's the absence of fat, and the protein becomes toxic in your system. Your body can't process it.
Amino acids become toxic because the liver gets damaged, and you're missing the 2 essential fatty acids because there are no essential carbohydrates. And I think that's the sort of like when I learned that, this has happened to me probably about 15, 20 years ago. I was reading a book and it said carbohydrates are never required. I mean, I thought I was a smart guy, right? And so it took me finally to read that one statement, carbohydrates never required in the human diet. And from there, I'm like, okay, then what's sugar for? Sugar must be for something.
Right.
What are amino acids for? They're making proteins. What are sugars for? Glycosylation. Carolyn Bertozzi just won the Nobel Prize on this 2 years ago in chemistry or science on glycobiology. Most of the new drugs for cancer are made in the glycosciences. It's a multi-billion-dollar systems. It's highly proprietary. Why do you think maybe we don't know about the glycobiome?
Wow.
So interesting.
Kind of new and different ideas that take some, like, I got to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? I think you present things in such a different way than I personally have heard before. It makes you think differently. And I think so many of the different people that we have researched, we have listened to, we've had on our podcast, essentially we're all saying the same thing. We want to consume meat. We want to consume protein. We want to stay away from a lot of the plants and vegetables that didn't frankly even exist 100 years ago. We engineered most of them, but the way that you present it, I think it just makes the listener think so much like, hold on a second. We've never heard that before. And what you just said is not in my nutrition book, by the way.
No, it's not. And I'm a voracious reader on glycobiome and the glycobiology. There's some good stuff on our website, but ultimately it's fatty meat you must eat.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You have to say fatty meat because, again, fatty meat suppresses inflammation. We give IV fat to help people get pregnant.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
How do you, though, hold on. How do you convince a woman that, like, hang on, we're going to put an IV in you, and this thing that you grew up being so afraid of, and every magazine said don't have fat on your body, and maybe the sorority you tried out for took a permanent marker and circled it on your body in front of all the other girls, we're going to inject that into you via IV.
They don't have to eat it. Well, they give it to IV. They'll take an IV if it's medicinal, if it's all for, it's therapeutic and it's a drug. And if I first started looking at people doing this, it becomes a thing. Well, did you get your lipids? Did you do that? Next it's going to be, did you have your stick of butter today? But we use we just recently found fish oil lipids. There's an olive oil lipid and there's a soy oil lipid. And so we used to lose a lot of soy oil lipids. I don't love it, but we had it. And now we're really into the fish oil lipids. But if I can get everyone just maybe go to Kiltz's keto carnivore, I call it the baby's way: bacon, eggs, butter, beef, my ice cream, and salt.
We're still gonna get to the ice cream very soon.
Yeah,
yes,
that's okay.
Yes.
No, yeah, we're good. But this
I was reading through that on your website, which, again, you have some phenomenal resources, by the way, on there, and I do encourage everybody to go to your website, check it out, because the resources on there are amazing. They are like second to none, and there's such depth to it, and that's what I personally enjoy, is seeing the depth to it. It's not just very blanket. There's something else there. But that said, where I want to go just before we go to that is I want to touch on intermittent fasting. We ourselves have probably been intermittent fasting for about
7 years.
7 years now. It was right along the same time that we learned about keto, and we had gone that route. But like, the intermittent fasting is the thing that has remained steady. You have some interesting points around intermittent fasting, and we made mention of the fact that many people, particularly women, are fearful that if they intermittent fast, it's going to interfere with their hormones, most specifically their thyroid. I would love to get your take on not just that, but also around fertility, around these women who, their focus is on getting pregnant. I mean, how do all these pieces fit together?
Well, what's the cause of most disease, including reproductive dysfunction? It's a plant-based diet and lean meat. And so they already have enough reproductive dysfunction all in on their own. We likely had difficulty finding food on a regular basis. We didn't have a lunchbox or a cooler to carry our food around for thousands, millions of years in evolution. And so I always questioned the dogma. Well, what did women do 10,000 years ago, when they couldn't find food? And if you look at many animals, they spend a lot of time foraging and looking for food. Maybe we did that. But in the summer, fall, you get fat. In the spring, in the winter, in spring, you're gestating and delivering a baby. And so I look at bears, hibernation. They go, long time without food. And I'm like, well, then how are they surviving? What are they living on? Right. And so we get fat in order to go through our fasting. And fasting, by the way, to me, is no food in your gut. It's not just not eating. And I don't like the word intermittent fasting. I call it intermittently feasting, because you want to intermittently and then intermittently eat. And I like the 23-1. That's my way that I like to do it. But, again, we're still talking in a world of keto and like you got to eat and you got to get your proteins. How many proteins does your body need in a day? Amino acids? A lot less than a lot less. And if I can go 7 days without eating, and people go months without eating it if they really, have enough fat, and a bear can. And I tell women in early gestation, don't eat if they have nausea and vomiting, because their body says don't put the food in. Can you go 5 days without eating and you're still going to ovulate and get pregnant and have a baby? Well, why not? The damage is eating the food, and too much protein and low fat is damaging also, by the way. And so I don't think we've really had the experimentation yet. I'm giving you my opinion, but if I look at most nature, I look at polar bears. Go look at a polar bear trying to find food for weeks and months, but they're not dying. I mean, some are after, because it's getting harder and harder, but many animals go longer than you and I ever know without food. Once your gut is empty, your hormones are still working. They're working better than ever, right? What's the primary intention of a mature reproductive age man and woman?
Reproduce.
That's it. That is it. Nothing else. Everything we do. And why do you think as a teenager we want to have sex? That is the most reproductive time for a human animal. That's it. And so, but we're damaging our children in utero, and then they're damaged in their youth and adolescence, and then they're screwed up for life in a lot of ways, and they need me in order to help them in ways. But if you haven't eaten in 3 days, again, our brain says, well, I got to go find food. Well, thousands of years ago, you didn't wait for someone to deliver it. You got your ass up and you went and found it, right? But hunting, if you look at wolves hunt, do they get their food right away? Most carnivores actually take a while to get their food. It's rare for it just to show up. And so men and women, fasting is lasting and intermittently feasting is the very best. I like 23-1. But again, interesting enough, in the post-ovulatory time, the week plus before your menstrual cycle, are you hungrier than usual? I think it's normal to be that, because historically you didn't have a birth control pill or a vasectomy or an IUD. And if there was a menstruating woman or a premenstrual woman post-ovulatory, it was about sex and fertilization, because survival is reproduction. You could see in parts of the world where reproduction isn't happening, and these people are suffering. They lose their families, they lose their lives, because and the depression amongst women who can't have a baby is humongous. And in my opinion, it's because we're telling women, oh, wait till you're 30 or 40, you'll be fine. Or, here's your plant-based diet and It's okay.
You see the combination of those two things. I mean, that's what's led us to where we are now. And I think that you could, and I know people don't like us pointing these things out, but I think it's pretty obvious that we're waiting until later in life to have babies. We've been eating these terrible diets for almost our entire lives, and our children are coming out with a higher prevalence of autism and different diseases, which you may have seen that once or twice when you were a kid.
Yeah.
The odd kid that may have had something. Today, it's like what? 1 in 18, something like that.
Plus.
Everyone has something. I mean, I was dyslexic, ADHD, OCD. I mean, I was a little bit of a criminal kid in a gang, couldn't read, and I was incorrigible. But gee, might it have been the food I was eating? I mean, terrible migraines. And so you have to realize that the brain is just another organ of the body that is dysfunctional primarily due to glycation, plant antigens, plant chemicals, and fermentation of plants in your gut that makes alcohol. That is the simple answer to 99.9% of things, which also causes reproductive dysfunction on male and female sides, endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, I called plant-caused ovarian sickness.
Got chills. Wow.
Done. And if I have a woman that has PCOS or female fertility issues, and the guy has normal sperm, he doesn't have normal sperm. It's dysfunctional. Why is it dysfunctional? The glycocalyx of the sperm head is damaged. It cannot recognize the egg. It cannot penetrate it because it's got the wrong barcode.
It makes a lot of sense. And from my understanding, at least a third of infertility is usually due to the male.
I say it's 100% male, it's 100% female, and it's 100% both. And, every time, I have people all the time, well, we thought, it's a male factor. I'm like, okay, but I'm putting this embryo into you. I got to know more about you, what you're doing, how you're taking care of yourself. And do you want this one embryo to be the baby, or do you want to see me 5 or 6 or 10 times?
I just have to ask this. I mean, just again, watching friends struggle. I mean, it's so painful, and we're so grateful to have our 2 amazing boys that we have. But in watching friends, do most fertility doctors do what you do and ask about their diet and ask what they're eating, or is that not even part of the plan?
I'm an outcast.
Okay.
And I love it.
You know what? Us too.
Yeah. Well, when I ask people your diet, it's usually healthy, organic, and keto. Okay, that is it. Then I ask them what they eat. Bacon. Okay, you eat bacon and that's it. Well, no, I have cheese and I do like salad. It's like, so really we should have for every human being, and something we don't have is give me your week of food intake. Take a picture of it, write it down. I don't care what it is, but sometimes people are like, oh my God, he's a keto carnivore guy. Now, people just don't like to say that, but they're kind of like, I only ask the question and I say, listen, I need to know the details about you so I can be the investigator and I can help you heal your problem. But if you don't want to tell me everything, how am I going to heal you?
Yeah. Well, I watch friends go through treatment after treatment and they're putting, embryo in and nothing happens. And it's like, it just seems so obvious, right?
Well, this is why I write my books, which you could go online to my website, by the way, and download it for free, or go to Amazon and buy the paper copy. But I write a family building guide, which I share all this in the keto carnivore guide, which is kind of not it's for everyone, and the others for the fertility realm. But ultimately, everyone wants to live and lead a fertile life. And so I don't care if you're in the reproduction at your age, but if you're not, someone that is. Yeah. And so if you learn these things, I mean, if I learned this at 20, it would have changed my life. And, I got the list of people that have passed because I believe of a healthy diet and healthy lifestyle, which is not good for us.
Yeah. I know we're coming up on time, but I'm like dying to know this now, knowing about blood type and sugar and the glycobiome. So with our first son, I was more of I would say a balanced eater. It was my salads, it was my leaner proteins, chicken breast and things like that. And then of course, a smaller amount of healthy fats. and he's A positive. Now, with our second son, I was straight up keto, and he has O blood. Could your diet have anything to do with that?
Our diets epigenetically affect the environment of our body.
Right.
Okay. And so think of a sperm and an egg as an electromolecularly charged entity, that its environment that you put in it is going to affect its function. All right. Now, maybe this sperm is going to be able to attach better to this egg, and this sperm better. There's a lot to the blood type concept, but it's because we're eating a plant-based diet. Okay. Now, I'm O negative. I don't know. I love meat, but is that, again, the stories? I mean, I don't know what lions or other carnivores' blood type is, maybe, but our blood types likely evolved based on our diets. And remember, the glycobiome, the sugars in our body. So sugars are energetically and electromolecularly attached, right? And so you have to think of all this as a molecular structures, right? We look at us and we think we're solid, but we're not. There's a string theory and all the atoms and the space between the atoms and all those sort of stuff. But ultimately, there are molecular reactions happening based on the environment that we live in. And remember, the environment, think of the bowels as a bucket. What you have in that bucket determines the function of the rest of your body, because you're pulling out of this all the things in there, the microbes, the toxic chemicals that the microbes make, the plant chemicals. And remember, most of the plant chemicals are made by the plants, not by humans. 99% of pesticides are made by the plant. And so we don't even think of that. Just go out to your garden, take some leaves off a tree, some grass off the ground, blend it up and give it to your husband as a smoothie. I mean, we don't do that, right? But we do from the plants that we've eaten, because over thousands of years, they've been shown to have the least toxicity, but they're not non-toxic. They're just lower toxicity. Although my daughter would die to an avocado and a banana, of no one that has an anaphylactic reaction to ribeye steak ever.
Yeah.
It's funny because I cannot do bananas. I can't do avocados. And in fact, how I actually arrived at carnivore was that even though we had been low carb for a very long time and eating, predominantly keto, I found out that I'm fructose intolerant. Like I would have a salad with some berries and I'd be sprawled up on the couch for about 8 to 10 hours.
It's not the fructose. It's a glycoprotein in that fruit that wants to kill you. It's like a bee sting. It's an antigen. Fructose is just sugar. That's not toxic to our bodies. Sugar, glucose. There are about 9 sugars in the human body that aren't glucose. We only function on glucose.
Yeah.
But we're forgetting about all the others and the function of glucose. But again, I don't like the word keto diets, but I use it. And I don't like the word low carb diet, because if you tell me low carb diet, I'll bet $1 billion it's a low fat diet, because keto and paleo and carnivore are high fat diets, not low carb diets.
Yeah.
But we can sell this better with a low carb diet. But again, lettuce, fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts are all carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's no such thing as a low carbohydrate, right? It's like smoking a filtered cigarette and thinking you're getting less nicotine in things. It's not true.
It's a good analogy.
That's good. All right. Well, I want to tie this up with ice cream.
Yes.
Right? Everybody who's holding out, like, all right, hold on a second. They've been telling me this whole time that I'm not supposed to be eating these plant foods and I'm supposed to be staying away from all this refined sugar. Like, where does ice cream fit in here?
Okay, so what happens to amino acids in your body? They convert to glucose. Okay, so when you eat amino acids, you're getting glucose or you're not. Okay, so what happens when you eat cane sugar? How is it metabolized in your body? It's a simple sugar, small amounts. In a very functional liver, which means insulin sensitivity, remember, insulin resistance is liver damage. That's all it is. And so my liver works great. My insulin works great. I eat a bolus of sugar. It goes into the hepatic portal bloodstream. It goes to the liver. Insulin shoots over and says, okay, we got this one. Boom, fat. Is that bad for you or good for you?
Interesting.
What happens to amino acids you eat? Oh, all this protein. Great. Let me have a high protein diet. All this like protein mixes and shit. Again, boom, to the liver, insulin, got this one, fat, because you have a very low need for amino acids, far lower than we ever know. How is it a bear survived 6 months, no food, and yet lost no muscle mass? Because we have a lower need for amino acids. Now, if you're a bodybuilder and pumper, I don't know. There are vegans who are bodybuilders and pumpers, right? Okay. And so, I mean, if you get a thing that says this is all protein, how do you know that?
Oh, yeah, that stuff is, I mean, there's so much protein spiking, and you can't believe everything that's on the label, that's for sure.
Yeah. So ultimately, look, at life is meant to be enjoyed. I fly airplanes, I do snowboarding, I do things that are dangerous, take a shower, walk up across the street. And so, oh my God, never eat sugar. That's not the world I want to live in. I occasionally have a martini. I sit with my friends and have a cigar sometimes. I'm not going to live life and say like, oh, I can never do that. I'm a minimizer. I'm really good at and I don't ever use the word addiction, because you label it, you enable it. Don't do that to yourself. I am a healthy human being and I live a life that's great. I'm done with the world of like, oh, you're all addicted. Come to me. I'll make you be unaddicted. You already have the power right now, but ice cream I love. My grandmother loved it. My mother loved it. And there's some good ice creams you could buy at the store. I occasionally buy them. It's like, oh my God, I just need it today. My brothers were all out going out visiting them, and we celebrate. We have steak and ice cream, and I occasionally make fries. And remember, simple sugars and amino acids quickly go to the liver and quickly are converted to what? Fat. Complex carbohydrates take hours, days to digest. And most people are full of complex carbs the day they're born, the day they die. And so it's what's in your gut that matters. So I do a pint of cream, 1 egg, and whatever cream and eggs you want. But, if you get free range and all those great things, get them. That's always the best. And then I put maybe 2 or 3 vanilla beans. I scrape them out, put them in there, mix it up, and I put a tablespoon or 2 of white sugar. Depends on the people I'm making it for. I'm not trying to make people suffer in life. And I will occasionally do a cookie cake with my ice cream, because 99% of the time I'm having my fatty meat, bacon, eggs, butter, beef, and salt. That's Kiltz's way. And, if this is, I call it the way, the baby's way, as opposed to Barry's BBBE, bacon, butter, beef, and eggs. I'm the baby's guy. I make babies. And again, it's simple. Now, some people can't do cream. Some people can't do eggs, and okay, don't do it, or butter. But, if you go online, you could get, you just Google my ice cream recipe, it's there, and you got to enjoy life. I'm sorry. I will go to a party sometimes and I will have something. You can't have that. But I work it for myself that I mostly make sure I go to a place and they always have steak somewhere or something similar, even chicken wings. I don't, but you got to enjoy life. And you have to have faith in God. My opinion is we got to talk more about faith and positivity and love and kindness. And, the carnivore, keto, all this. I'm not here to banter with anyone or debate in a negative way. I'm just telling my story. You either accept it or you don't. If you could teach me something, I'll go like, maybe. But the complexities of the people, sometimes we're just like making it, I find it difficult to understand. So I just step back.
With you. I mean, we're definitely not all about the dogma. And I mean, I'm more than happy to have a cigar with you anytime. I mean, that is my thing. I am good for a cigar and a bourbon or a scotch.
Yep.
Every so often. And but I think you're right. Like that becomes though that 1 to 3% of your time, of your, your year, whatever it is. And that, I think is always what's important that we just, convey to people is that like, yeah, we're saying this, but we don't mean that what got you in a bad place was doing those things every day.
Yeah.
And it being a staple of your nutrition, and you didn't even have all of this other foundation underneath you first. And you can't build on a foundation of sand.
Or you binge it, or you binge it, you binge it, you binge it. We're not here to binge. We're here to savor these things. Like a carton of ice cream. No, a couple scoops, enjoy it. And you'll get to that point where you can savor life, savor the moments of your children, your family, your friends.
Love that. Well,
so
and I would only say that we have to agree with you also on the faith piece. That is the central part of our life, of our relationship. You have one God, and if there's two people and they're both trending towards him, then that's going to bring them closer together. So that always goes at the top of the list, and then everything else falls beneath it. But this has been an awesome conversation. I mean, we really appreciate having you here. It's fascinating. I got to learn something today, which, is, to me, that's life. I love getting to learn. I mean, I'm diving into research studies every day, but this is a much deeper conversation than that, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Corey, Beth, and Mike, I've enjoyed this immensely and look forward to us communicating again. And I'm sure we'll have you on our spot to share where you guys are at and what you are sharing in the world. But, I think faith is always first, and fatty, fertile foods.
I love that. Love that. Well, hold on. Before you go, just let everybody know, where they can find you. We want them to be able to connect with you.
And we'll tag all of that in the show notes as well. So we'll link everything.
Go to drkiltz.com. That's the very best place. And then you kind of find me all over the place. And, I have one thing I recommend to women. Men, they're dumb. Sorry for my language. No disrespect, men. But you flatter them, and feed them and make love to them. And they'll just shut the fuck up, and you can just go shopping. And by
Mike
the way,
does an amazing job. Mike does an amazing job.
And men have to do this. And again, we have fun with all this stuff, and you got to have fun. You got to laugh at it without humor. I mean, it's just, this is serious, but it's also, you got to have fun. So.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure. Take care.